Yeah, look, I'm sure if you had Pfizer able to, give doctors cocaine tablets and market them without advertising the side effects, then more people would do it, and more people would die from it. In fact, that is kind of what happened about 100 years ago. Not necessarily Pfizer, but they were selling these kind of like cocaine cough syrup drops and tablets just over the counter.
Right, Coca-Cola right over the counter.
Exactly.
Hello and welcome to the Mindfulness Experience Podcast, brought to you by our official media partner for the Wonderland Miami 2023 conference, working with Microdose. I'm your host, Keith Fiveson, and today we have an exciting guest who's making waves in drug policy and psychedelics, with extensive experience in reporting for some of the top publications in the industry, including The Guardian, Vice, and DoubleBlind. Mattha Busby has been on the forefront of Western psychedelic renaissance. Mattha has also recently launched his podcast, Uncharted Territory, where he discusses the impact of and the Renaissance with his guest. And in addition to that, his first book, Should All Drugs Be Legalized, was published by Thames and Hudson in 2022, making him a leading voice in the conversation around drug policy. I'm excited to have him as our guest. Please welcome Mattha Busby. All right. Mattha, how are you?
Yeah, very well. Thanks very much for the generous introduction, Keith.
Well, it's so exciting to have you here, and I really appreciate your perspective and your thought around this, and you coming out with this book, I think, is really a very important book and a really important discussion. I've had this discussion ever since I was 17, so for the last 50 years, I've been really focused on the fact that I believe personally that all drugs should be legalized, and they should be classed, specifically the ones that are legalized now are the worst. They're the absolute worst, whether or not it's SSRIs or whether or not it's opioids, right? We look at that show, Painkillers. I don't know if you've seen this Netflix show. Very powerful on Purdue Pharma and on what the FDA did and really what the impact has been globally. So I do see some opportunities here. It's great to have you on the show. So you've extensively reported on drug policy and psychedelics in Europe and America. What sparked your interest in reporting on this topic?
Yeah, I mean, in much the same way as you, I see the way that pharmaceutical companies are able to market certain drugs, Adderall, like it's not that different to illegal amphetamines. And there's just a kind of disconnect between what people can do with plants that they find from nature and right. What legal entities can do with, as I say, pills that are very similar to the ones that are illegal if they come from different sources.
And I'm totally in agreement with that, because I am finding it difficult when we talk about drugs. Drugs has a very bad stigma, the name drugs to it. But then, we look, and even psychedelics, but we look at entheogens, as you just said, plants, and, they're from the ground, they're from the earth. Why are we forbidding people to go ahead and work with plants? That sounds so bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, the UK just banned laughing gas, right? So people face the possibility of a 2-year prison sentence just for doing it, and something like 14 years, correct me if I'm wrong, for selling it. Only if it's not being used for like a legitimate purpose, like catering or filling up a balloon or whipping cream or something. And this all came about because of the litter, really, like people leaving the canisters everywhere. And obviously that's not a great thing. and we should figure something out. But it seems to me that a more sensible policy would just be like a can or like bottle return scheme, and let people crack on with the laughing gas, which, unless it's used in crazy quantities, is pretty harmless. But the thing is, some people do use it in crazy quantities and do.
What do they do? They go out and buy it. Where do you buy it in the store? Or you buy it all in the underground, or what? Where are people getting it from? Because we've used it certainly on our whipped cream, and I've had a grand time with it. I mean, it hasn't. We all laughed.
Yeah, I mean, the clue's in the name. I had this story published yesterday, and I was referencing my friend Mike J's new book, Psychonauts and the Making of the Modern Mind, I believe it's titled. And these folks like William James, father of American psychology, Humphrey Davy, they were some of the original psychonauts. And they're talking about experiencing something akin to unity consciousness thanks to nitrous oxide.
Right.
And in the best conditions, I think it does provide that sort of portal. I don't think necessarily if you've had a big night taking every drug under the sun and drinking loads and just doing a balloon on the street corner is going to be that enlightening. But certainly. Wow,
this is the first time I've heard of this. I really can't believe this, Mattha. I really can't. What is going on? What?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the topic of my talk, right? At Wonderland, is that on various metrics and indeed, certain examples like this one, the US is somehow more enlightened than the UK. Obviously, then it depends on the fact that there's state law in the US and there's actually more direct democracy in the US, and there's a more kind of federal kind of centralized system in the UK that's more resistant to change. But considering the US was the main propagator of this war on drugs, it's kind of interesting, right?
So you're from the UK. Churches. You're from the UK, and certainly you're in Devon, and we're having this conversation. We're going to meet in Florida, I hope. And but there's this white Anglo-Saxon Protestant kind of conservatism, and I'm wondering if that could have something to do with it, because not far away you go over to the Netherlands, and you can whether or not it's cannabis or truffles or anything else for that matter, you really have a very, very different environment, and it's much more of a reformed environment from a religious viewpoint. Do you think that has anything to do with it?
I guess, some countries just have more of a, let's say, cognitive libertarian approach than others. I don't know. Maybe the Fort police in England is more intense than that in Holland. Maybe they've just always been smoking weed, so they
I mean, you guys are still wearing wigs in the courtroom. I mean, come on.
I mean, why are you American guys so into cults and the weird and the wacky and shouting out from the rooftops? What is there some fundamental thing that makes you more gregarious than us Brits? Possibly, because of the awful things that happened just 300 years ago, or the fact that the Brits are like this kind of introverted, shy island race, simply because of geographical reasons, feeling this post-imperial nostalgic melancholia that there isn't really in the US. Although
that's wonderful. Can you repeat that, please? Please repeat what you just said.
It's not my phrase. It's not my phrase.
But it's a great phrase.
Nostalgic melancholia. So it's this kind of state of being where I think a lot of folks are partly because of the media, right? And what people were led to believe about British supremacy, isolationism, blah blah blah. But now we're just at this point, and it's like, well, what do we believe in? We haven't even got the church anymore.
Right.
And there's just like a shyness as well. Obviously people do magic mushrooms in the UK.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's to the same extent in terms of like the percentage of the population, but in the US, definitely people are more prepared to set up organizations, even without invoking the religious freedom stuff, and just be like, look, we're doing this. Come join us if you want.
Right. Well, I certainly know a few folks in the UK, some very very much looking at microdosing and working with mushrooms. So there's a lot of that, mom's microdosing. But there's a long storied past here. And, I think the prohibition and the stigma surrounding them is changing. What's your view? And, in terms of the psychedelics in the industry in the U.S., very different in terms of the way the laws are. California just legalized it, and we now have, several states. So, beyond the ethos or beyond the, is there anything else? I mean, because from a medical viewpoint, what's really driving it here is the MAP studies and the efficacy rates of being able to deal with, whether or not it's depression or, a whole host, even addiction. Kentucky has just legalized or put together $42 million in a study for harm reduction and getting people using Ibogaine to get them off of opioids. So there's a whole other, but you're saying that it's very that there's a stigma and it's very slow in the UK versus the US. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there was a debate in Parliament the other week, and some pretty sympathetic noises were made throughout the chamber about psilocybin and its therapeutic potential. But you can't compare just like some of the snail paste stuff. Just a conversation about moving it from Schedule 1 to Schedule 2 to Kentucky moving towards entirely funding a clinical study for Ibogaine. But the US is a lot larger, so therefore it's a lot more likely that more things are obviously going to happen if there's more people and more land and a more kind of diffuse political structure. But I think all over the world, for the most part, the English-speaking world at least, the kind of taboos, if you like, of 15, 20 years ago are fading fast because everyone's getting high. Everyone knows someone that's either benefiting or is drinking less or is just on paper sympathetic to this stuff. Because one good thing about humans is we're stubborn, but we're only stubborn for so long. Like when you start seeing the data, when you start seeing these vets talking about how they had awful PTSD and then smoked 5-MeO and now they're managing it.
Managed.
You can't kind of deny that.
And the efficacy rates are much higher. I mean, you look at psilocybin or 5-MeO, DMT, and you look at those efficacy rates, and even they're 60, 70, 80%. And even looking at ketamine, with treatment-resistant depression or suicidal ideation, we do see the capability of using that. But you're saying that it's pretty much stopped. Now, you've written this book. It's slowing down in the UK, in other words. You've written this book. I want to talk about it. Should all drugs be legalized? What inspired you to write it? And, what was one of the most surprising things you learned during your research?
I mean, I was kindly invited to write the book. So it was like part of a series about these like zeitgeisty questions. Should we save the planet? Can we save the planet? In fact, is masculinity toxic, etc. I mean, one interesting thing that came out of it was Nick Clegg, the former deputy prime minister of the United Kingdom, saying that he once spoke to Felipe Calderon, who was the president of Mexico at the time of the war on drugs being launched. And he said that he told him privately that it was totally futile as early as like 2006. He kind of knew, people people want drugs. Like, I don't take cocaine, but a bunch of people do, and it's going through Mexico from Colombia to get to the States. So surely makes more sense just to provide a kind of legal and regulated framework, because whatever you want to say about the pharmaceutical companies, they're not fighting in the streets over supply lines for bloody Adderall or Ritalin, are they?
Now, my premise is that governments should not only manage. I believe in sort of like the Portugal model. I believe drugs should be legalized, and it's from a schedule viewpoint, and from a social viewpoint, there should be more social programs to help individuals. Whether or not it's, police should be trained in psychology, not in brutality or force. Because there are a lot of people that are acting out that are, imbalanced. They're hyper aroused. They have hyper anxiety. They may be somewhere on the spectrum, who knows? I think when we start taking a look at bipolar, whatever, but we do know that from a use of psychedelics, we see a lot of the curative power of it, whether or not it's neurogenesis or, being able to have neuroplasticity. All of these things are really wonderful. But then you mentioned cocaine. So, when we look at like the highest death rates, they're legal. Alcohol, 150,000 a year. Opioids, 75,000 a year, certainly here in the US. And then, cocaine is a whole other, bale of wax. You mentioned Adderall before, whether or not it's Adderall or methamphetamine, they're very close. So, what do we do about this? And what about your book, and how can that help move the needle?
Yeah, look, I'm sure if you had Pfizer able to, give doctors cocaine tablets and market them without advertising the side effects, then more people would do it, and more people would die from it. And in fact, that is kind of what happened about 100 years ago. Not necessarily Pfizer, but they were selling these kind of like cocaine cough syrup drops and tablets just over the counter.
Coca-Cola, right over the counter. Got it.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, they deny it. They deny it now, but I mean, clearly it was, and it's still flavored from an extract of the coca leaf.
Right.
But look, it's no panacea. Yeah, people having like serious bad trips. There's charlatan shamans all over the place, even laughing gas balloon. I was a bit like flippant about it earlier, but even that could make someone have a bad time. So we're not saying that this is all butterflies and rainbows, but clearly a lot of these drugs are a lot more beneficial used in the right way than some of the legal drugs, regardless of how the legal drugs are used.
Right. And when we look at Purdue Pharma and what happened with the FDA, and basically they were, basically drug dealers that got everybody hooked. They said it wasn't, that it wasn't addictive, and people pop it, and basically heroin in a pill. So, what do you do with that? And those are legal drugs, and they're still legal, and they still haven't paid any price. And we're trying to get the good stuff to market, whether or not that's entheogens, or whether or not it's some of the but biopharma is very much involved with it. So I do believe, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are, is that really it is the industry, the pharmaceutical industry, and the cartels around that, and the tension and maybe the power structures that really make these drugs, some illegal and some more legal, but yet addictive. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I was in Texas a few months ago and I hurt my back, and I was in quite a lot of pain, and some friends gave me some oxys, and I'd never tried them before, and actually they were great. Really, really helped. I mean, it sort of just masked the pain, and I was still in pain the next day, and I didn't have any more oxys, so I didn't take any more. So I wonder, like, it got me through the day, but I wonder if it like delayed any sort of process. But I didn't get addicted, I guess. Only took them once. I'm sure, all these things used in the right way is fine. It's just, they're clearly not being used in the right way when they're being like stuffed down people's necks. But what was the question? I know I was like riffing on the final point.
Yeah, I think the question is why are some drugs that are bad for you legal, and other drugs that are good for you, that really help promote brain growth or neurogenesis or neuroplasticity? Why do you think that is so? Is it just stupidity, or as you say, it's about some people abusing it. But I'm just wondering if there's a deeper thing here. And you're right about it. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, sure. I mean, on the face of it is a series of historical anomalies, right? So, yeah, the drugs used by colonial elites became impervious to prohibition, alcohol and other things. The kind of sober intoxicants that arrived 16th, 17th century in Europe, cacao, sugar, tea, coffee, all just very palatable and were commercialized, with the Western companies taking the vast majority of the surplus early doors. And then, I guess slightly later on, you've got opium, coca, and out in Mexico and elsewhere, peyote. And it seems to me to have been in some part about social control, and that certain groups used some of these drugs more openly than others. I mean, peyote uses a sacrament, also mushrooms. Seems to me that they tried to ban it because it was like an alternative source of spiritual power aside from the church. I mean, the opium thing is obviously a bit more complicated. The opium wars that the UK fought against China to have the right to be able to sell tons of it. And we were also making it available in pharmacies through like Laudanum, I think is the name of one of the brands. And then when the addictive nature of it became clear, that the mood music sort of changed, and same with the cocaine stuff. But there's obviously a deeper tale about some groups using it more openly than others, and those groups tending to be of color and non-white, and then many of these drugs just being dressed up into pharmaceutical drugs.
Right. And I do believe that as we started to see Timothy Leary and the movement, the psychedelic movement in the 60s and the 70s, that Nixon and the FBI were able to shut down a whole potential revolution, if you will.
It was a genuine countercultural.
It was a genuine countercultural
phenomenon,
and you shut them all down with drugs.
That's one argument to have gone through the medicalization route now, because it's like, all right, guys, we'll play by your rules. Right.
And I believe there's with this, what we call the psychedelic renaissance, I think that there is a real shift in terms of consciousness and spirituality, and a real need, certainly, for ceremony and community. I'm wondering, from your viewpoint, when you start, looking at, ways of consuming psychedelics, if you will, from MDMA assisted therapy to ayahuasca ceremonies, as you say, how do you see them differing in modes of consumption? And do you see it changing perhaps in the future with the rise of psychedelic churches, or, RFRA, Religious Freedom Restoration Act churches that really allow the sacrament as a use? You have thoughts about that, seeing the trending around it?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be a whole panoply of options for people to, take psychedelics. So that there already is. Some are existing in a grey area. Some are abroad because folks don't want to operate in that grey area. But there's obviously going to be economic pressure to put it inside a clinic, as opposed to the kind of community ceremony where people are paying anywhere from $50 to $100, $200 a session, whereas your Oregon psilocybin trips like $4,000.
Right.
But in that $4,000 session, you're going to get like one-on-one care, whereas in a big room with loads of people on mushrooms might not be as beneficial for one's healing. Right. The ayahuasca stuff, it seems like in some places there's a bit of a crackdown, and other places it's like folks are just operating, I'm talking globally, with like total license to do whatever they want to do.
Neo-shamans selling ayahuasca on the street.
I mean, there's serious questions here, and I don't necessarily know if having someone from the FDA with a clipboard walking around is going to solve any of these issues. But yeah, when anything grows as quickly as it has, and when there's this much kind of money involved, there's always going to be bad actors. And yeah, I'm sure that community and word of mouth does some good in rooting folks out. But yeah, there clearly needs to be way more safeguards in place and a way more rigorous system for people to check the authenticity and references that some of these providers have, both in the kind of legacy market and this emerging clinical market.
I was listening to somebody recently talk about a sense of a shift in reality to a whole other the digisphere, those who are living in the digital sphere versus those who are living in the physical reality, or IRL in real life. But I'm wondering, because it's hard to imagine. You can go on Instagram nowadays and you can buy whatever you want, and there is a real scare here in the U.S. about fentanyl and about products that are laced with fentanyl. And I think your point earlier about going to a ceremony, obviously doing the vetting and doing the work around that, versus going to a $4,000 Oregon psychedelic assisted therapy provider. There are different. I guess there are different qualities there. Do you have a sense as to? I mean, we're going to be at Wonderland, and the Miami conference is amazing because we've got this confluence of people from all walks of life coming together, whether or not they're on the indigenous side or on the, whether or not they're in the research side or whether or not they're, providers. I'm just wondering, when you start taking a look at all of this area, you're doing some work around your Uncharted Territory podcast. So, and you've talked to a lot of people about, these kind of different subjects. Do you have some sense as to, in your own perspective, where where we're going to be going? Is it all going to be medicalized, or are we still going to have an underground culture, or will it just be all legalized and people can decide based on their risk tolerance whether or not to go to a community or go to a doctor?
Yeah, I guess I would firstly say that I think that, the fentanyl issue in the US would be vastly, vastly reduced if, folks could receive medical grade diamorphine in supervised clinics, like what happens in Switzerland. What do I think the future holds? I mean, last year in a city in Holland, these activists set up a kind of mock MDMA store, and stimulating discussion around what models could it be, a kind of neoliberal, laissez-faire, buy it anytime you want, or a more like pharmacy model, with prescriptions and everything, or somewhere kind of in between. It's really going to depend for each substance. But I just think that at the end of the day, if folks do want to be able to get their hands on stuff, and as you say with Instagram, it's not just the dark web now, it's literally Instagram, Telegram, anyone can get their hands on any sort of substance. Right. So the onus is really on the state to justify its position, really, and make sure that everything that everyone is likely to consume is as safe as possible. And actually, the effect of prohibition just contaminates the drugs because they have to get smuggled, and there's like a massive profit motive, and it's all out in a wild west, and like kids fighting over it. Right. So it's just the worst possible situation ever.
And I'm a big fan of psychedelic assisted therapy. I'm a psychedelic assisted therapy provider, and I'm a big fan of mindfulness and meditation and looking at working, using these tools, these medicines, as a way to go ahead and realign, reboot, reset, reframe, and realign your experience so that you can be more present in relationship to yourself as well as the world, right?
Sure.
That's really, at the end of the day, we want to reduce the harm and increase the amount of benefit that comes from it. In light of looking at legislation in the UK, and some of these things that are happening, as you had mentioned before, policing of venues that participate in psychedelic ceremonies, and that seems to be happening more and more often. Do you see this as a step in terms of safety for participants, and do you see things sort of changing at all in that regard of misuse?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I would say that I think, the therapy aspect to it is really crucial, and it's where I personally have gleaned, the most benefits, rather than just doing the trip and then going home, or even just having that sharing circle. I think that kind of more rigorous one-on-one follow-up integration therapy is
right.
really where the good stuff can come. With regards to any sort of policing. I don't know. A friend was telling me the other day that he was picking magic mushrooms last year, and they were just like packing up today. They've got hundreds, and an unmarked police car arrived, and confiscated their mushrooms. They said there's like a big problem with picking in the area, and my friend was just bemused, like, what sort of problem? And I was asking him what he did to relax in the evening. Apparently he would drink like this kind of fruity Copperberg cider. Fair enough, probably not going to get a bad trip from it, but I don't know, like, as I said, I don't think necessarily having a regulator with a clipboard going around and doing like an annual inspection of like each ceremony is necessarily gonna solve everything, but some third party kind of oversight I think is crucial, because like at the moment you've only got the community to depend on, and obviously without a kind of whistleblower kind of system, how many folks are going to want to put their head above the parapet and be like, hey, this guy that we're like venerating into some sort of urban legend actually put his finger up my skirt. Fairly, like, big up everyone who's brave enough to do so. But I imagine, and I know, because I just worked on a documentary in Mexico, that loads of people obviously don't have the avenue to do that, and until some journalists start asking around.
Right. So I think boundaries, I just had a conversation around specific boundaries within ceremony, within guides, within these working with neo shamans, or working with anyone that claims to be a guide. Are they creating a safe space? Are you really talking about touch? Are you talking about what's good, what's not, and really helping to, through that therapeutic process, really helping to set the setting, and have the right intention, so that the integration, whatever happens, whatever shows up, because the medicine is inside the individual. And if somebody has an experience, you don't want, you're open, you don't want to be invaded. That's part of the problem. But I do think that the quality is going to be much better, certainly. I'm wondering, from your viewpoint, what would you like to talk about? What would you like? What's the burning subject in your mind nowadays that's really kind of getting you excited?
Excited? I mean, I guess I look at the direction of travel here, and it's at the same time, extremely exciting and concerning. I see like the bigger groups. I'm not sure that there's going to be able to be as good standards of care, because we're already seeing that in ceremonies. And I fear that there could be like a race to the bottom, just like we see in mainstream healthcare. But really, I'm not seeking to be like an ambassador of these concerns. I think other people, have articulated them a lot better than I. For me, yeah, I see myself, I suppose, as someone who's kind of lived the psychedelic renaissance, just through happening to be, a 29-year-old guy here who's been on a bit of a quest to feel better, and has been at parties where people have just suddenly whipped out a bag of magic mushrooms, or I've been stupid enough to take drugs that have been contaminated with other drugs, and it's spun me out. Or I've been lucky enough to do ibogaine therapy and really understand the power of and the danger of that medicine. So I guess I'm keen to just talk about my own experiences and the benefits that I've had, and also some of the traumas that I've experienced through it.
So let me ask you if we can sort of dive into a sort of a more mindful space. So what role do you believe, in terms of looking at these psychedelics, looking at these tools, these medicines, what role do you believe that mindfulness and or yoga or other lifestyle changes or lifestyle patterns can have on the individual? And do you think that it really does require a therapeutic environment versus a party environment if someone's really dealing with trauma?
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you asked. Yeah, I know, I totally resonate with the stuff Ram Dass was saying. He just kept over and over taking acid because it was just a constant search for ascension. And what yoga and meditation does is allow one to connect with oneself, the body, the mind, everything else, and to find that place of zen that can be carried through the day without the use of any substances or anything, really. I mean, I've recently nailed down 15 minutes minimum every morning.
Oh, good for you.
Which I'm really glad about. And the yoga is also really vital for me. And I just think it's a way to connect with your body, and the disconnection from the body and the breath is at the root of many of the issues that we're facing. And psychedelics themselves aren't gonna sustain us. It's having a meditative state of mind that will get us there. I hasten to add, all of the sugar that I've consumed today might not have helped me in that regard, and might be why I'm talking a mile a minute. But it's just one of those things. It's one of those things. Some days I don't have any sugar.
Yeah. I think that. So what I hear is, from a biochemical viewpoint, that we talk about the biopsychosocial model in terms of therapy, and then we talk about like just being present to your breath, just showing up in the moment, just showing up for whatever's going on, and then being okay with that you don't need to change that. So when you're out of sync with that, you're, whether or not it's from coffee or sugar or whatever you're putting into your body, or whether or not it's trauma, unresolved trauma, then the problem is you may not be able to be in your body as good as you would like to, or as nice as you, or as present as you'd like to. So this is where I think working through therapy, or working with some of these medicines, is really very, very, very helpful.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It opens the window to oneself, consciousness itself, and can help rewire the brain. I mean, after I did the iboga, people were stopping me in the street saying that I seemed lighter. And it's obviously like a never-ending path. And definitely, I should say, some of the lessons that have come very clearly during some of these psychedelic trips, I haven't upheld to the letter of the law consistently. But yeah, it's a path, and yeah, that path includes not taking psychedelics all the time as well, and just having like a regular yoga and meditation practice.
Yeah, just being present to whatever is present. Yeah. So I want to ask you.
Otherwise, it's just crazy, and you see it like, and yeah, maybe I've been there earlier in my life, not with necessarily psychedelics, but just raving, and yeah, you've got to be mindful with what you're consuming and do it in the right way, and yeah, it really doesn't have to be all the time at all, and maybe quite possible one gets to a place where it really doesn't have to be like often at all, if ever. And
right.
Yeah, I'm sure that one could get these benefits also through various other means. It just might well speed up the process, especially in our very imperfect society.
So I want to ask you one last question, Mattha. When you look ahead, do you see any developments that you'd like to see, perhaps, within the psychedelics industry in the coming years? I mean, if we're looking at, it's 2023, we're going into 2024. So, let's kind of look ahead, and what do you see happening in the industry?
Yeah, I mean,
or what would you like to see happening? Yeah, let's put it that way.
I would like to see some of these psychedelic churches somehow managing to bring their sacraments to market at very, very affordable prices. Because at the moment, it's not looking great for a lot of people if you want to go down the legal route. And I just think the most important thing is accessibility. And of course, with anything, right? Like with an electric car, at the beginning, it was way more expensive, and now it's less expensive, and a wider strata of people can afford to drive them. But I think that needs to just be at the forefront of people's minds, like access to quality like packages of treatment. But part of that, we're going to need like macroeconomic change.
Right.
So,
and I'm not sure the church would want to go after that quickly, right? I'm not, I because you're right, the churches are having a hard time.
Yeah, and I mean, this is part of why it got shut down in the 70s, right? Because it was part of a wider movement for reform throughout society. So but I would say, look, like, let's not get caught up, everyone, with our own kind of very narrow interests, and use the lessons that psychedelics teach us to look at the interconnectivity of all things, and understand, as many people do, that this can be a tool to change society and the economy for the better, and not allow it to totally become this sort of desensitized clinical thing that people just get in a minuscule amount every day to just manage their symptoms, right?
Right. Well, wouldn't it be wonderful if the real war was really around the things that prevent us all from, the basic necessities like food, shelter, clothing, community, the ability to connect in with the land, connect in with the earth, connect in with the things that really are the things that are our brothers and sisters, start looking at the world as a place where, we're really taking care of each other. And I think that's perhaps, the ideal. That's maybe a utopian ideal, but I think it's really possible. And I think that's what, having a clear understanding through the use of psychedelics really keeps you, or puts you in touch with, is the ineffable beauty of the world and your own capability for love.
Yeah, and I think everything is changing from the ground up, frankly. Like, it will reach a critical mass of people that don't totally subscribe to a kind of rational materialist framework or just a 9-to-5 kind of culture, and the whole working from home pandemic stuff has accelerated it to an extent. And I think many people would be surprised to understand how many other people share their views that may not be reflected in the media or what politicians say or whatever. So look, I think we're broadly on some great paths, but there just needs to be a lot more self-awareness and understanding that there are shared struggles here, and the quicker that people can create a united front, the better, really. But then it's more likely to come into competing social forces, which is what the kind of psychedelic movement has largely tried to avoid.
I think Burning Man was up to 70,000 people or 75,000 people, or I mean, there is this and there's this push in terms of the communities and the online communities. Last year there were 3,000 people at Wonderland. I'm wondering and hoping that there will be as many this year, if not more. So it'll be good.
Yeah, I mean, there was like 13,000 people at MAPS.
Yep. I was
really
there.
Really insane.
Amazing.
It was amazing. It was amazing. And
really
look, to have like that conversation between Aubrey Marcus and Aaron Rodgers, and I think I'll make that point in my talk. Like, he's the MVP. He's the best American football player. Like, can you imagine like the best like rugby or cricket or soccer player, right?
Or to have Rick Perry from Texas, open up the event. I mean, that was amazing as well.
Yeah. I mean, on some levels, I do think, Americans are more open-minded.
It's changing
than Brits, and it's really interesting to explore why.
Well, we can hopefully explore that and have deeper conversations when we're down at Wonderland, Mattha. Tell me, how would people get a hold of you if they want to get more information about you and or the work you're doing, and certainly put out a shout out for your new book, please?
Yeah, well, thanks very much. Thanks for the conversation, and thanks for the kind of evolution of the pronunciation of my name from something, not exactly how it's pronounced, to then finishing with exactly my name, Mattha. It's
so
impressive.
I did okay, Mattha. All right.
in the end.
So in the end, I recapped myself. I saved myself. I hope people are here still to hear the fact that I've recouped my valor.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know what the kind of analytics of podcasts generally are, like how often people stay till the very end.
Right.
But I'm on Instagram, Mattha, MATTTHA Mundo, X, formerly known as Twitter, if anyone's still there, just my first name and my surname. Pretty much those places. And as I say, like, the book is like a coffee table book. It's not like a weighty tome. I was happy to write it. Should all drugs be legalized? The conversation's moving so swiftly that it already kind of feels a bit out of date. But check out the podcast. I've put the first 10 episodes up, and now I'm taking a little bit of break from uploading and just building up a tranche.
I totally get that. I totally get that, my friend. So beautiful stuff. Thank you so much for joining the Mindfulness Experience Podcast, Mattha. And I really have to tell you, it's been a pleasure having you on discussing all these topics. And I really wish you the best of luck with your book as well as your podcast. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Likewise. See you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Mindfulness Experience Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. We have other exciting guests coming up in the next few weeks, so stay tuned. For more mindfulness tips and tricks, visit our website at workmindfulness.com. Thanks again for being a part of the Mindfulness Experience. This is Keith Fiveson.